Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. How are you?
I am
nearly Friday.
Nearly Friday.
Yeah.
We record because we are busy getting ready for TinTech Data Jam. It's coming up week on Tuesday. So yeah, racing towards us. So really busy getting that together.
There's been a slight lull, hasn't there? I think there's a slight lull in the whole feel of the market. I mean, bit of Easter, bit of post half-termish feel to it, and now it's picked up again.
Yeah, I think so. I think because we had the early summer as well.
Yeah, that's sun.
Yeah, now we've finished with summer, so that's good news.
Yeah, so we're back to work now.
Yeah.
It's September, really.
Yeah, it feels like it does today anyway. Yeah. Welcome everybody to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week we're going to look at all those three things and just as I say, preview maybe TinTech London market and have a chat about some of the movers and shakers that are kind of moving around the market. It's quite interesting what's going on. But let's start off, Ben. I'll tell you what, Ben, my Roadcaster's broken.
Can you believe it? That's shoddy. I've got the old original version.
Yeah.
And it seems all right. I haven't used it, though, recently.
Yeah. So mine had a week off last week, and now it won't start.
Well, that's poor. Yeah. I mean, I always thought they were quite robust. I mean, I've got a very original one.
Yeah.
Anyway. Use mine.
So I'm back to this little tiny box of tricks. And
it sounds like you're in a little tiny box compared to the Roadcaster as well.
Does it? Oh, well.
Yes.
That's what you got. We're going back in time. So the only thing I've got is an explosion.
Oh yeah, that's good. That actually, it's old school, but it's good.
Yeah, back to the 90s. There we go. Right. So let's talk about this article that you found, Ben, in Insurance Insider. Talking about going back in time, Syndicate in a Box. God, I'm trying to remember when that was, but
it was just before the virtual underwriting room.
Oh yeah, we're still waiting to find out what that is.
I think that's long gone. The virtual underwriting room. It was so virtual, nobody knew what it was,
or where it was,
It was virtual, so it was everywhere or nowhere. Anyway, let's not tread on that old ground.
No, let's go back to this one. Yeah, Syndicate in a Box. So, useful stepping stone or failed experiment.
So this is a nice article in full that the Insurance Insider has let everybody have a look at. So I will do that, and good analysis here by Rachel Denton, the journalist over there, and really, I guess the short story here is that, originally Syndicate in a Box was an idea for innovation. It was to try and shortcut the tortuous process, which it often is, of getting a syndicate set up at Lloyd's. It took a long time. And I suppose this article is a bit jury out on as the headline implies, but basically I'd say probably on balance, the market sees it as a bit of a failure largely. So in 7 years, 2 full syndicates have launched and 11 others have kind of got going, but they're not gone on to full syndicates yet. So they're still pootling along, but not at the scale. And so the idea was you get small syndicates, typically monoline. Well, no, not typically. They had to be monoline, so they weren't like full kind of insurance businesses. So that was a bit of a problem because if you've only got one line, it's hard to grow. And then there was a 3-year sort of time span set on it to reach 100 million, which actually was quite a high bar, because when a business is setting up, regardless of, in Lloyd's or not, or whatever it is, it's probably a bit longer than that. And you and I would probably know that. So there was a bit of a struggle to get to that 100 million. And also the very nature of setting it at 3 years kind of turned market participants off, because it felt short term compared with other capital. And the regulatory burden wasn't quite as light touch as they thought. Surprise, surprise, London insurance market, or any insurance market. Yes. So it wasn't quite doing what it was hoped for, which was to be quick entry for innovative, single product, effectively, syndicates. And one that did come out was Carbon, I think, which has gone on to greater things. And they were syndicate in the box for a while, and then they moved into being something different. I think they're a kind of MGA, aren't they? If I can remember rightly. No, they're an underwriting. They're an underwriting business. I'm sorry, Carbon. But anyway, they've been quite successful, and they did use the platform to build data in their own platform, their tech platform. I think also the philosophy of Lloyd's change, and this is probably almost more important, perhaps, is that, and actually we should talk about this. I think Lloyd's, honestly, through the Neil period, it was a bit flaky, and the strategy didn't seem to change every 5 minutes. I mean, we were joking about virtual underwriting room, but that was, one of the typical sort of things that was just floated idea out there. Now, was there much behind it? Obviously not. I'm not sure this had a bit more to it, I think, but then suddenly John Neal was pivoted towards this idea of big game hunting and getting big players into back syndicates in Lloyd's, big brands, big names, scale names. So the exact opposite, really, of syndicate in a box. Of course, you should and probably could have a twin track approach, big players and innovation, which is what Lloyd's is supposed to be about. So I think Rachel Denton here argues that exactly, really, which is the choice now, is to probably just either wrap this whole thing up and Tiernan to work on the costs overall of the market and the efficiency, so that you can get innovative players in regardless of having to give them a special entry point, and limit the costs of being a member of a syndicate in Lloyd's, or they go through they kind of set up a sandbox type approach, so that they really truly have innovation and allow people to fail and succeed on that basis. So, they failed experiment, probably closer to a failed experiment. It does say a lot, though, I think, about and raises questions about, is Lloyd's really wanting to be innovative and serious about it? It needs to do something more along the sandbox lines, I think. But the question would be, is that what Tiernan is really interested in? And indeed, does the market need lots of small, innovative players? I mean, I think you always do need players to come in, but maybe Lloyd's is no more that place. It's no longer that place where it's too reliant on globalization and scale and big players supporting it. It's not that easy to do both. You are either one thing or the other, I guess.
Yeah. And I suppose if you look over the recent past about where those new organizations of kind of, Convex, Mosaic, those types, they've set up outside of that structure, I think. Because of the reasons you've been saying, it's easier to operate outside and to get to scale, in a quicker time frame.
I think the capital requirement, probably I think one of the things that it doesn't mention in this article, which might be quite important in what you're saying about challengers that have come in and had success, like Convex. Now, of course, Convex didn't set up as a syndicate. It's only lately joined as a syndicate, but it basically became a company market player, raising capital outside, and a significant amount of capital. But then, of course, there was Inigo and others. IQ has done that, but they were. The difference, I think, for those businesses is they were fairly well. One, they weren't monoline, but they were established, experienced underwriters setting up those businesses. So I think the management investment was probably more appealing to capital providers with those businesses. They weren't they weren't startups. Yeah. Equally, though, I think it's fair to say that they're not. Those businesses, those challenges, and probably even including Convex, are not that innovative. They're not different models. They're maybe a slightly better version of a very established incumbent. More agile, perhaps a bit more tech oriented, all sorts of things. But they're not a change. They're not a sea change in terms of the type of model. So that would be the concern: is that are we and quite a few of those challenger businesses that you talked about have now been sold effectively, so they are being consolidated. And arguably, AIG is investing in Convex, so the drift of the market, or the trend in the market, is toward consolidation, even for those successful challengers outside of this. So perhaps it is more going to be about scale in the future. And, it doesn't matter. I mean, it may be that, the scale goes on for a while and that's what the trend is. And then it, like in all markets, it spins out into innovation. It might be MGAs that are the innovators going forward. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a managed process.
No, it doesn't. And I think then if you layer over that, some of the themes we're going to touch on at TinTech Data Jam, and the extraordinary pace of technology development may, in the future, enable different business models that are not reliant on, the old ways of working, but with a cool brand on top of it.
Yeah, you're right. I think talking, if you go and talk about the capital space at the moment as well. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things going on in the capital space, which means that even traditional insurers are under threat, because you could get all sorts of smart capital from all sorts of places, and you don't necessarily. So the part of the question is, what's the value add of a syndicate? If it's only just providing a bit of capital for a certain type of risk, that might be just too small and too narrow. Whereas perhaps a more interesting aspect is, a sort of smart capital provider with a very techie MGA. That's a kind of interesting angle, which could be much more flexible with a different type of approach. Refreshingly different, I suppose you could call it. And there are some of those around, particularly in the cyberspace. There's been a few of those that have been successful. And then you've got, I suppose, some of the old big MGAs like the CFCs and so on have gone into underwriting latterly, so they've done it that way around. So it's where's the entrepreneurialism and where's the innovation going to come from? Anyway, it doesn't seem like this has really worked, and it's such small amounts of money when you look at it. I think the total is something like 300 million or something against the billions that the market is commanding in London. But even that is part of a multi-trillion-dollar business, so you feel like scale is hard from the position of starting as a startup. It's a bit like the Lloyd's Lab, isn't it? You can get micro businesses off and running, but it doesn't move the needle on the big issues in the market, really, on which are about, as you say, technology, efficiency, data, and bigger platforms, and then you can innovate. There's kind of a restriction in a way on some of it, I think.
So that's pretty interesting. So let's just explore that a bit more. So I've had quite a few conversations as we build up to TinTech Data Jam about kind of the innovation that AI technologies can deliver to organizations, and not only organizations but to individuals, and very quickly individuals over a couple of weekends can now code these products and create these dashboards or whatever it is. But then it gets into, which is great, and that's kind of your innovation, and and you can see it at kind of a front end level, but then it falls into kind of old governance and regulatory and compliance structures. And so the kind of maybe the competitive advantage that you might have gained through being first to market, and learning and going through that process is lost because the wheels turn so slowly once you need to get it all signed off. So that's quite interesting, I think, because that's a real blocker on innovation within organizations. And I think there needs to be a mindset shift. I think, organizations, I think, need to make a decision on which is kind of what you were alluding to when you were talking about, scale or niche. Are we going to be at the cutting edge, innovating, pushing the boundary, testing it with a regulator, but in a live environment, or are we going to be a faster follow? We'll take the platforms as and when. But is that too risky? With the pace of change, it's quite an interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the part of this, as you allude to, I think, is the sorts of organization that ultimately the market will want to provide them with insurance products. And what are those insurance products? So let's not go into that space, but that's changing too. I mean, there's some interesting articles in the FT actually about how does the industry deal with catastrophe type situations and the problems of if you set up a flood re or a government backed part of the market. The trouble is that means that the innovation kind of stops because there's a backstop effectively, so you lose the market effect of that, and then effectively people are getting free cheap insurance on the back of the government, but almost like a government treasury bond backing the insurer. So that's an issue that Flood Re have been talking about, and so that's not necessarily the solution either. But there are then, for you as an organization, what are you going to be? Are you going to be a kind of institutional global provider that can provide an optimal kind of product around the world? Well, that's fine for your standard property, casualty stuff, up to a certain level of complexity. But what about niche type insurances? For example, credit insurance, credit risk insurance, which was really small years ago, but it's growing quite a lot, and it's a hugely enabling piece of insurance for people who are importing and exporting, as I understand it. But it was because there was innovation going on between underwriters and brokers and working with the regulators. So you could still therefore say that actually the pace of change ultimately will be quite slow in an insurance market because of that regulatory element. And there are people who say this, is that ultimately it is quite incremental. You're not going to get great gear shifts because of the risks, as you say, that are involved. I mean, they're not just the cost risks, but they're the risks of writing business and getting it all wrong. You kind of need to look at an insurance business over 3 years to 5 years, really, to say, are we actually going to make any money? You might be doing brilliantly in year 1 and 2 and have no claims, but suddenly the market shifts or claims come in for some reason you didn't know about, and then you're gone. You're wiped off the face of the earth, as it were. So it's that sort of business, and I think we have to accept it's that sort of business. But the pressure is also to say, can we get the products that align with the new risks?
Yeah.
It's a conundrum.
It is. An interesting one at that.
So I think fair play to, I think the article sort of says it's fair play to Lloyd's for trying that. I don't think you can criticise for trying. And I don't think you should, say that, set it up so that you don't expect failures. You do, but you learn from that. I think it's how markets work, really. But we need perhaps more of that ability to fail. We did a Libra report last year, and we said almost exactly the same thing, which was sandbox type fast fail environments to try things out. So I like that idea. I think it's good. It doesn't, but you shouldn't then stipulate you have to have 100 million of gross written premiums within 3 years. I think you should say, see if the product works. And actually, potentially, maybe the product then gets taken up by a big insurer.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically, the first sandbox, the first in a box syndicate in a box was Munich Re, a small player that hardly anybody had ever heard of.
Yeah, never heard of them.
Yeah. Which I think we said at the time when it came out, that rather killed the concept for me.
Yeah.
For young up and coming businesses, the first one is the one that owns a large part of Germany. It didn't really need the innovation investment, did it?
No, I don't think so. Interesting. Right. Let's move things on a bit. Ben, I just wanted to talk a little bit about movements at the top. Let's put it that way. Kind of, there's a couple of things, isn't there? There's still the kind of continuation of consolidation, both in kind of brokers and underwriters, and different rumors. And Hiscox a couple of weeks ago, it was announced there was interest in that. And then at the same time, you've also got kind of movement at the boardroom level and just below of some of the leaders that we know, and it's quite interesting time at the moment. There's so much change going on that we've just been talking about in the business environment, take technology and AI and the soft market and all that kind of thing, coupled with this consolidation kind of phase and movements around talent.
Yeah, so I think so you can take this at different things, but so you look at the evidence, and what you're seeing is quite a few senior moves, particularly in claims. Actually, I mean, maybe because I'm looking at claims, but I think it's elsewhere too. I think there are lots of moves in underwriting and senior management generally. So in the UK GI market, at the composites, the big composites, there have been really a lot of senior management changes. A lot of people have moved on and gone. And this isn't just people moving for their own reasons. This is the organization shuffling around the leadership. And the reason they're doing that is, I think, because they're changing their strategy and they're setting their strategy out to be successful. And they've set the strategy, and they said, okay, well, not all the people we've got at the moment are the right people to lead those things out. So we have to change, and we have to bring new people in, and we even have to restructure. So claims is interesting because I think the evidence that we're seeing is that claims is getting much more into the boardroom or the exec group than it ever was, and there are moves that would support that. So you're seeing many more group claims directors now appearing. Whereas before, claims was actually quite siloed. It was an operational unit or set of units. So you could have your Asia Pac, your London, your US. They didn't really talk. I mean, they talked to one another, but they weren't coherent as an offering, part of the offering. So I think all of that structuring is to do with probably the industry at that level seeing inevitable or imperatives really in the strategic positioning of their businesses to win and to succeed or thrive. So there's more movement than I've seen before. And I think I always say markets are either thinking or not thinking. And at the moment, this market seems to be thinking more than I've ever seen it before. And I think that's because the moves are getting quicker they're quite sudden, jarring things where you go, my God, there's 4 senior people who I knew at that organization have left and gone. Not because they were bad or incompetent, just because they weren't exactly the right people for what the next strategy is. And that's absolutely right for businesses to do that. They must do that to survive and thrive. So, you know, and then that creates a knock-on effect, because once that starts to happen, then people, partly because people like me go, hey, look, everybody's moving, you better get on it. Are you thinking strategically? But it's true, you know, everybody starts to have the same conversation. The discourse has shifted.
So interesting.
So it's definitely, you know, to our earlier conversation, these will result in, I think, executional changes in the businesses. They will be implementing businesses in different ways, investing in technology and all that sort of thing, which we could touch on.
Yeah, I think that is quite interesting. I think one of the reasons that organizations are in that strategic thinking mode is because, and I get this when I talk to people, is that it's so unclear how the technology landscape is going to pan out. I flip-flop between, 1 minute thinking, wow, this is absolutely going to change the world for the better, to thinking, oh my God, there's only a few years left until Terminator arrives.
Yeah, that's the whole AI debate that's going on, isn't it? Yes, there was a phrase that's been used, I think the Anthropic guy, less than zero. There's a less than zero chance of it killing us all, but that kind of means there is some chance of it killing us all, and I'm not quite sure what less than zero means.
No.
But to go back to the point, I think I can give you an example. I mean, I was talking to a senior exec who has just moved, who was telling me only a few weeks ago, this business I'm in now is very exciting because we're going to reinvent the whole insurance proposition. And this was a big business. But that person has now moved to somewhere else where presumably they are going to reinvent the whole insurance business proposition too. So who knows what these conversations are? Because I think some of these people, while money is still an incentive, I don't think they're just moving for the money. I think they're moving for the career prospects and the challenge as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. 100%. Good. These are going to be interesting discussions in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll get a feeling for what people. It's a very exciting time. I've done most of the briefing calls now for the sessions, and some of the stuff that's going on, within companies, but also within software suppliers and stuff like that. It's just kind of crazy nuts. So yeah, and then you've got the whole kind of ROI and how much is it going to cost, and are the business models of the tokens and all this stuff, is it all going to change? So yeah, very
and also you have quite a bit of M&A that has already happened, which is going to churn through. So you've still got the Beasley Zurich churning through, the IQ Star churning through. Yeah. You don't need, and then there's rumors or potential for more mergers and acquisitions. And so there is a lot of that coming through. And you look at some of these businesses and think, well, okay, so when you do a merger, that's the opportunity to rethink what your both, your operating model, but also your proposition and what you set up to achieve to be successful. And I think there's a lot of that happening. But that's also a lot of head scratching as to, it's very complex at the moment for businesses, certainly the ones I'm working with, to say, what do we do and where do we position ourselves and how do we best position ourselves to win? I don't think that's very clear. And I kind of think we're perhaps maybe thinking here a bit about insurers more than brokers, but when you look at the broking side of things and even the MGA side of things, that as well is fast moving and shifting and changing. And it's also very complex and messy as well. I mean, that's the other thing, is it's still incredibly inefficient, messy industry. So your earlier point is, yes, you could end up not just with AI killing you, but you could just end up with an even bigger, more horrible mess.
Yes.
Just with a few fewer companies, and then maybe you do go back then to saying, well, bugger that. Let's just have some small, trustworthy tech platforms, running. I don't know. I think there's something going on in the capital side of things that has to change. I think that not everybody can add all the value they think they can add.
Yeah,
is my take. Is that if you're primarily a capital provider and insurer, I think you have to stop pretending you can add loads and loads of value and sell everything all around the world direct almost. That's, you've kind of got to work with that distribution value chain, which is the broking and the MGA type businesses, and work out how you can make that work effectively, keep your brand up there and all that sort of thing, and deliver a great product, and do the stuff you're good at. Basically, I mean, there's so much overlap. That's part of the problem. Is there's brokers and insurers do overlap quite a lot at various points, particularly in claims, for example, where an administration and bureaucracy, and it's just completely dumb because it's cost that and it's inefficiency and it slows everything down, which is why it's also kind of messy and slow. But that deciding what you are and where you sit in that value chain, to me, is a fundamental thing that people have to do, and you have to give up something to do that. Can't do everything.
Nope, you can't. Good. That was interesting. Thanks, Ben. Okay, let's wrap things up. Doing anything good this weekend? I don't know what the weather's going to be like.
It's going to be all right, I think, the weather. I'm not doing a lot. I think you and I have both got injured feet, haven't we?
Yes.
So I'm not going to be doing anything particularly physical, I don't think. I'm going to force myself to rest.
Oh. I think I'm coming out the other side.
How are you?
Okay. Yeah. I'm on the road to recovery. Although that's because I made a doctor's appointment. I managed to get a doctor's appointment, which immediately means all your symptoms go away.
Yeah, of course you do. You feel better when you've gone for a doctor's appointment. I think that is one of the main kind of cures. Well, it's a sort of what do they call it? Placebo effect, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway,
because otherwise you're just worrying about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see what they say.
It might not really. I mean, I was selfishly hoping yours would be worse than mine, and then I could have felt better. That's another placebo effect.
I don't mind pretending.
No, it's all right. Now you've said it. I know you're feeling better. You could tell.
Yeah.
But mine's. I don't know. Mine's okay. Maybe I'll just make a doctor's appointment.
Yeah, get it fixed.
Men don't go to the doctors, do they? Very
no.
Much. It's hard to go to the doctors, though. I mean, talk about insurance being inefficient. I mean, doctor's surgeries are a joke, aren't they? Still.
Yeah. It's very frustrating because they told me to get on. I rang them up and they said, "Oh, you've got to get on the app to the appointment." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And it didn't work.
No.
And then I couldn't make. And then I don't know. There's something wrong with my app. It's not connected properly. Anyway, I did manage to get it to work. It took me 40 minutes to fill in all the forms, and then they immediately rang me back to say, "Can you come in?" I was like, "No, I'm sorry. You'll have to fill this form in."
I honestly think the insurance industry should compare itself with the GP industry, because I can tell you, I think the insurance industry is a shining model of efficiency compared with that. I mean, I've no clue as to how they can't conceive of a simple, queuing system to get appointments. I mean, it's every other business in the world does that pretty well. Maybe they should look at McDonald's or something or what, but I cannot conceive of why they can't make it work. But they've all got different ways of doing it.
Oh yeah, they're all individual entities, aren't they? It's bizarre.
Crazy. Anyway, so that's. Other than that, I'm just going to my in-laws.
All right, very good. I'm running the Water & Breeze Summer Fete on Sunday.
Well done, Ben. Good for you. Is that the second time you've done it?
Yeah. So last year it was baking hot, and we had loads of people. I think this year we probably won't have quite as many. But anyway, if it stops raining, we'll be all right.
Have you got an indoor bit?
Nah,
Like
it's
a
all
cake?
outdoor.
Okay. They
There's
can
lots of-
you can make more money when it rains counterfactually and jumble sales and fates because people spend more money. When it's sunny, they just, kind of sit around in the sun.
Yeah.
Just see whether I'm right or not. I mean,
Okay, we'll see. Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will be back next week. Have a great weekend.
Bye.